Hello everyone, welcome to the Google Ads Talk Show. In the studio I have Josh Roberts with me, our head of Google Ads. How's it, my friend?
How's it? Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you here. In the show we just talk about everything Google Ads related, from strategies, tips, tactics, etc. And in this episode specifically today, we want to talk about what boxes a small business needs to tick if they want to consider Google Ads. I believe, Josh, that there are many businesses who want to do Google Ads, probably not a great fit for the actual platform.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion. You can maybe shed some light on, what we look at V8. If a business comes on board, what boxes do they need to tick that will allow us to increase the probability of success? The reason I say that is because there's a lot of companies who are happy to spend money on Google Ads, but they may be not in the right spot as a business to really see the bigger success. This could be because of margins. It could be because of the products that they're currently stocking. It could be because of their budgets, for example. I mean, you'll obviously know a little bit better, but that is the main conclusion of today's show is what does the business need to tick in order to succeed with Google Ads? So Josh, from your perspective, start wherever you feel like is best.
Yeah, so I mean, there is a couple that I can kind of highlight is that firstly, you do need to have a reasonable amount of monthly ad spend. And I mean that we do have a general rule in terms of businesses that we work with. It's generally a minimum of 10,000 Rand per month. But I mean, it depends again on the industry that you're in. So I mean, some businesses, they can get away with a smaller amount of ad spend depending on whether they're only advertising in a certain radius, for example, as opposed to advertising to the whole country or major city centers. So, but again, a general rule of thumb is a minimum of 10,000 Rand per month. But if you were to start doing it yourself from scratch, never done it before, then maybe just start with a bit less, because you don't necessarily want to waste your budget if you don't really know what you're doing.
Tell me something. Can we maybe explain to people why a minimum of 10K is the benchmark? Because I think some might be sitting there going, well, that just sounds like an arbitrary number, but it's quite a well thought out number, I think, on our side, because we've been doing this for quite some time. Maybe just touch on how we've come up with the 10K benchmark, really. And this is obviously specifically if you're hiring an agency.
Correct,
so we can touch on, why is there a 10K benchmark for us as an agency, number one, and then number two, if you're doing it yourself, why you feel the benchmark can be much lower.
Yeah, well, I mean, full transparency, the business needs to have their advertising spend on Google and also, pay us our monthly management fee. So that is why we recommend a 10,000 Rand. And in addition to that, we don't necessarily have a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of the actual campaign structure that we, implement for all clients. But in order to have that structure as best as possible, you do want to have the budget to do so. And again, when I mentioned just now that every industry is different, what I actually mean by that is that every industry has got different CPCs or cost per clicks, because Google Ads at the end of the day, it's an auction. So if getting into an industry that's super competitive and you've got your 5,000 Rand budget, but the cost for a click is 100 Rand, that's only so much traffic that you can drive, which I mean, it's not to say that you can't do that. It's just going to take a lot longer in order to get the results that you want.
So what I'm hearing you say is, like, if you're working with an agency, our job as an agency is to get you results as quickly as possible.
Yes.
But if we've never worked with your business before, then we're going to have to do various amount of tests on the back of that in order to get enough data so we can start making better decisions to drive those results.
Correct.
So therefore, you might need a higher budget, because otherwise we're not going to be able to deliver the value in terms of finding out what's working and what's not in an efficient amount of time.
Yes. No, you will probably be disappointed if you were to start with a lower spend. We agreed to that.
Yeah.
So again, there are certain situations where you can make do with lower ad spend, but we just generally like to set that expectation from the get-go.
Because I think there's a lot of people going, oh, why do agencies need such a big budget if I can do it for 3K? Well, the reason is we want to learn as much as possible, as quickly as possible, so we can start making the right decisions to drive results for your business. The only way to do that is to test. And that's why we need the budget, because with testing comes risk as well.
Definitely, yeah.
And it's understanding, like, we're going to test, but a lot of the stuff might not work, but it's doubling down on the things that do work that's going to get you better results. And that is also why if you're doing it yourself, then you can get away with less, because now it's your own responsibility. There's the patience that you have is going to be longer in essence, because you're spending less and you're burning less money, and you're also not dependent on anybody else to deliver those results. So if you are a small to medium-sized business, you probably don't need that much, because you have a little bit more patience as you start developing the skill in order to figure out what's working and what's not. And that's why we advise that if you are a very small business, that you rather test it out yourself, because there's a good probability that we might waste your money, and we don't want to be in that situation. So we want to avoid that as much as possible.
No, exactly. And that's also what ties in with my next box that a business would need to tick, is having appropriate time expectations. So that's why we generally, say that we need a minimum of 60 to 90 days, and that's to see if there's potential in running Google Ads for your business. Sure. So if you are wanting to do Google Ads and you're expecting results after a week, then it's safe to say you're going to be disappointed. But it does take time, especially if you are starting from scratch, because Google does reward the players that have been in the game for a lot longer. So you almost need to, you're the new kid on the block. You know, Google needs to get to know you and all of that. So it's I mean, we've got businesses that we've worked with where their first 90 days wasn't very profitable for them, or they weren't getting a high amount of quality leads, but they saw the first 3 months as an investment and as you said, a testing phase. And from there, we have learned, Google has learned, and we've been able to improve and eventually get them the results that they want. So, I mean, coming back to what I'm saying, like, you need to have appropriate time expectations. It's an investment.
So budget is one thing, and patience is the second thing.
Yeah.
Is there a third box?
Yes. So there's kind of 5 that come to my mind that are the most important. Third would be, well, I think this would apply to any advertising platform, is a quality website. Your ads, from a keyword, from ad copy perspective, could be the best in the world. You could have click-through rates that are 30-40%, but if you are getting the right user to your website and you've got a slow website, or the website is not very mobile friendly, because it's safe to say across all the accounts that we manage, majority of the traffic does come from mobile. So if it's not mobile friendly, it's slow, doesn't have all the information that they're looking for, missing testimonials or some kind of social proof, they're going to bounce. And then you have wasted a click. Depending on the industry you're in, if you're spending on average 100 Rand for a click, that adds up. Yeah. So I think before even starting to run Google Ads, you need to have a quality website, and that in itself is a whole conversation or checklist that you can go through.
Yeah, that's definitely a show that we can start. But I think what comes to mind is, like you said, something that loads efficiently, that works on mobile, that's clear and concise, and not distracting with all kinds of different messages out there. And I think just alluding and touching further on that is, when you have specific keywords that our people are clicking on, they're expecting is a specific message on the other side of that keyword. So you need to make sure that the landing page, or the page that you're driving people to, is strongly associated with that keyword in some way. Otherwise, if there's a psychological disconnect, if I'm clicking on it because of the word whey protein, and you're sending me to a page where there is everything else but whey protein on it, or the whey protein is all the way at the bottom based on all the stuff that I have to filter through, then I'm most likely not going to stick around in order to convert. And maybe another way to look at it is also, the ads are designed to create the intent, but it's not designed to make the sale.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing you say is, like, the website is really the salesperson.
Yes, it's you essentially. You're the fisherman. You're catching the fish. It's up to the website it's up to them how they cook that fish.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So box number 1 is budget. 2, patience. 3, have a decent website that's loading efficiently, that's clear, easy to understand, and functioning on mobile. Box number 4?
That would be having enough margins to actually support your campaigns. So if you're a business that does have very tight margins, it's going to be stressful most of the time running Google Ads. But if you do have healthy margins, and I like that you're not necessarily too reliant on your Google Ads, then at least you can also afford to do some experimentation. Obviously, when trying to scale, there is a process with that. It does take time. So it kind of just boils down to, that's why it's also important, well, one, to have those healthy margins and advertising on other channels. You don't necessarily just want to be have your whole business solely reliant on one platform.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things we can unpack there. Number 1 is, you never want to be, like you said, dependent on one specific channel to grow your business, because then you have a very volatile, risky business. It's not really sustainable or consistent. And the moment that consistency kind of like deviates, then you're going to become very anxious and stressed out. And what I've seen is most of the time people start making decisions that are just terrible because of the anxiety and the stress and the fear. And that also comes down to profitability of the products that you're selling. Some businesses are in very competitive industries where the margins of the product are very little. So after running Google ads and paying that price that is determined to get a click, for example, let's say 20, 30 Rand a click, depending on the industry, then if you had to get a 1% conversion rate, that's already 200 Rand a sale.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it's like you're going to have to drive 100 clicks to get one sale. That's a 1% conversion rate, which is most, of what most stores have. I think the average is 0.8. So if you have a 1% conversion rate and you can convert 100 customers from Google, that means you're going to have to get 100 clicks. At 10 Rand a click, $100 a sale. At 20 Rand a click, it's $200 a sale. So the question is, can you afford to spend 100 to 300 Rand on a sale and still be profitable in the products that you're selling?
Correct, yeah.
And any other boxes? Box number 5, you said there's a 5 that comes to mind.
Yeah, the fifth one that would come to mind is just having a unique selling proposition. If you are selling the same product or the same services as someone else and there's nothing special about you that's going to stand out in terms of your search ads or even shopping, you are going to struggle.
Yeah,
so
because you're in a sea of competition, really.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, everybody who can afford to run Google ads are most likely doing Google ads.
Yeah.
Whether they're doing them efficiently or not is a different story, but most of those ads in some way, shape or form look the same. And what you're saying is like you need to find a way to stand out, and that usually ties in with the unique selling point of the product.
Definitely, because users are also, they're not just searching something, clicking on ad, going to the site and converting. Unfortunately not. They are also comparing. They're clicking on other ads, browsing, they're comparing prices, features, and so on. So that's why it's important not to just rely, again, on one campaign, because there are going to be multiple touch points before they actually end up making the sale.
So it's basically safe to assume that if someone has clicked through to your site, they are going to go back and click on other sites that are selling similar products to yours, because they want to make sure that they're making the best decision for themselves. And the only way to do that is to go back and compare what you're selling to everybody else. And I think this is one of the most underrated, things that people really think about, because the way to improve your conversion rate is to focus on what makes you unique, is to be clear about how this product's adding value to your life, and to ensure that you articulate how you're going to give people value for money if they had to buy from you. And it feels like most people do the bare minimum when it comes to their site. For example, e-commerce, they're going to have a product image, which is exactly the same as everybody else's. They're going to have a copy and pasted description, which is similar to everybody else's. They then going to have a website which has got the skeletons and bones, like no real meat to it and essence to it, just the framework of we have a site that's functioning. And they're going to then run ads. So yes, you're going to get the traffic, because Google will make sure of that to some extent. There's also times when you struggle to get traffic, but that's a conversation for another time. But it's easy to assume that if you're going to run ads, that there will be, depending on your targeting and whatnot, that there should be traffic. But the traffic is not the problem. It's converting that traffic into sales that's a problem. And that is not so much an ad issue. It's more of a website optimization issue.
Correct, yes. I mean, Google ads, running it efficiently and properly, that's one thing, great, but it ties in directly with the site or the landing page that you're sending traffic to. Again, as you mentioned, like if someone's searching for whey protein, you don't want to just send them to the page that's got all products or vegan protein. You want to make sure that the destination URL that you're sending that traffic to is relevant, so that you're not necessarily going to irritate, frustrate the user, because people are impatient. They don't necessarily want to look on your website when they land on it. So once they're on the site, they see the product, then at least they can browse reviews. Ideally, you want those, just as an example.
Out of interest, are there specific industries that excite you? So if we had to give you a client and you would see them in a specific industry, I know it happens to me where I would look at an account and I go, I get excited about this because I know we can really do some damage here. Is there specific industries that you feel that way about?
There are, yes. I can mention one that does come to mind. So jewelry does seem to be one that's, just generally does well on Google. And then, but again, over the years, we've also found industries that you would least expect them to do, well on Google, but they have healthy margins, and they do really well and get the returns that they want.
And in terms of profitability, coming back to one of the boxes, it is obviously making sure that you've got enough profitability built into the product. Is there a guideline? Like, what is the average gross profit margin on a product that you would ideally want to see, or do we not really have any numbers like that?
In terms of what comes to mind, I'd need to get back to you on the specifics. It also there's a lot of other factors involved if we are looking at a business or a business that wants to work with us. Margins is one of the things that we look at. So sometimes there's a bit of context, but it's also just looking at the business as a whole, looking at other things. To answer that question, I'll be honest, it's obviously you don't want to work with a business where the margins are like really tight. Even if there's a lot of things that are going right with the business. It does depend on the situation.
Because there's also the flip side of that, where you can easily say, well, you need a 30% gross profit minimum, but the reality is there are companies who have 15% gross profit, but they're doing massive amounts of volumes.
Yes, yeah.
So I suppose what you're saying is, like, every business is unique, and it kind of like depends on multiple factors to really determine if it's going to work for you. And just saying that you need this kind of profitability, you might be isolating some businesses with potential.
Yes, yeah.
Cool, that makes sense. Well, dude, I think that is really all the time that we need to spend on this topic today.
Yeah.
I think for those of you watching or listening, if we need to conclude, you need some form of budget. I'm saying if you're doing it yourself, $3,000 to $5,000, depending on your industry, obviously. We never want to give, just a disclaimer, I think Josh and I, we've known each other for quite some time. But as V8 as an agency, it's very difficult to give black and white advice, because there's no such thing really. Because everybody's business is unique. The resources they have is unique. The budgets they have is unique. The products that they have is unique in their own way, based on all the other context that we just discussed. So understanding that, it's more about sharing the information and why the information is important, and up to you on the other side of this to take that and contextualize it to your own business.
Correct, yeah.
And that's really what we're all about, is educating so that people can make the best decisions, as opposed to saying, this is the best decision, but you have one perspective on why. And sometimes there's multiple perspectives on why it's probably not the best decision, but that's never really shared or explained. So getting back, I think the boxes, if we have to try and keep this as black and white as possible for the sake of value and simplicity, is you need obviously a budget of some sorts, 3 to 5K if you're going to be doing this yourself. 10K if you're most likely going to be working with an agency. Then patience, really knowing that this is not something that you put money into. It's not a slot machine.
Unfortunately not.
That you can put money into and hopefully walk with money out. It is the same amount of risk of a slot machine in some sense, where you never really know if it's going to work until you give it a proper shot. And you reduce that risk obviously by having someone competent try and do it for you. But budget, patience, profitability, then making sure that you've got a really healthy website that's functioning, it's clean, simple, works on mobile, and clear and concise. And then lastly, it is making sure that there's some unique selling points at the end of the day as well. That will automatically draw more attention, and that will automatically help you convert more visitors into customers, because it will reduce the amount of comparison that gets done. Ultimately. That was awesome. Thanks for the time, dude.
Pleasure,
I really appreciated that. I hope there was some value on it on the other side for you watching and listening. If you did find some value, like and subscribe for more content like this, and then we'll see you next time. Cheers.